Dean Holden and Danielle Nicholls, thank you so much for joining the Integral Chat. For our viewers and our listeners on the podcast who may not know who you are, Dean Holden, you're assistant manager at Stoke Cici. And Danielle, you are a television presenter, and I remember you from CITV way back when. But we're obviously here to talk about a tragic situation, something that happened to you that no parent should ever have to experience. And I did worry about where to start, but I guess the best place to start is the day that your lives changed forever. So could you describe to us what happened in May 2012, please?
Yeah, well, myself and Danielle have been married for nearly 10 years. We had 3 young children, and we went to Lanzarote, and the very next morning after we arrived, our 17-month-old daughter Cece tragically died. She woke up not very well. We took her to the hospital, and within 2 hours she'd gone. She had a rare form of meningitis that they didn't vaccinate against back then, they do now. And it quickly overtook her, and she was gone. She was taken in 2 hours. We were hopeless and helpless in that situation.
Yeah, like we got asked that at the time. Like, people said, "Oh, did you not vaccinate your children?" And we were like, our children are fully vaccinated. They didn't vaccinate against Men B at that point. She was born 2 years too early for that, unfortunately, because 2 years later they were vaccinating against it. But it was the most frightening day of my whole life, bar none. And it was physically, emotionally terrifying. And the only way I can explain it to somebody is it was like being inside of a living horror movie where you watch a movie and the girl keeps trying to run away from the guy with the chainsaw, and she keeps, the lights don't work, and that panic, that fear, that it was that, and it was real, and there was nothing we could do about it, and we couldn't stop it, and we couldn't fix it, and all we could do was survive it. And unfortunately, we've been asked to become ambassadors for Meningitis Now. Now, Meningitis Now gave us loads of help at the beginning and reached out for us to be more involved with the charity at the beginning. We couldn't do it because any interview in any way involved addressing that day again, and reliving that day made me physically ill, because it's dead sad, but it took the COVID lockdowns for us to both be diagnosed with PTSD. Now, of course, we have PTSD, but you're just trying to muddle through, and you're just trying to get on, and you're just trying to make everything okay with this big shitstorm that is your life. And so we couldn't help like we wanted to help. So now we feel we've had hypnotherapy to be able to talk about the day without feeling emotionally frightened, and we've put it, it's in a place in our mind where it's almost happened to someone else, even though it didn't. We know it didn't, but being able to talk about it freely like that has took a very long time, which is really sad, isn't it?
It is, but I'm glad that you've both worked through those issues, and you're brave enough to talk about it now, because it is still a triggering situation, even just thinking about what happened back then. And for those who don't know too much about the illness, it is silent and deadly, isn't it? It just appears out of nowhere, and it took your baby in a matter of hours. Yeah,
it did. And she died of meningococcal septicemia, which is essentially the blood poisons, and starts to poison you in an attempt to kind of combat the virus. I'm assuming that's how it works, but I'm not a doctor, I don't know. But the people say like about the rash, and you think it's not always, it's great that that's a warning sign for a lot of people. She didn't present with the rash until really far on. And at this point, they're essentially trying to save a life. And so she had this rash, and as we get her to clinic, they strip all of her clothes off and pull down her nappy, and the rash is on her private parts. It looks like a bruising, and we just both went, oh, because we changed the nappy at about, what did we work at, about 3 a.m., 4 a.m., something like that. There was obviously nothing there then. you just want people who can see the signs to be able to help. However, unfortunately, there is an acceptance in knowing that it can present that quickly, because the doctor we spoke to at the hospital said it could have been a pneumococcal because of how quickly she deteriorated. Apparently, a pneumococcal deteriorates faster, but she's totally immunized against all the pneumococcals.
Right.
She was immunized against this one strain of meningitis B that they weren't vaccinating against, which Meningitis Now fought for, and now everybody has it. Yay!
We're basically travelling for 12 hours to get to Tenerife because, Lanzarote, because we've been delayed at Manchester Airport. We didn't get there till near midnight. We put the kids to bed. And Danielle says we woke up at 3-4 a.m. to change a nappy. And then at 7 o'clock, when the kids woke up to go to the beach on the first day of the holiday, she just didn't present as being that well. So we thought we'll just dip to the clinic, see what we need to do, and we'll come back and we'll
in that short time.
And within 30 seconds of getting to the clinic, which was 100 yards around the corner from where we were staying, there was 10, 12 doctors around her in an operating theatre, and she just literally went as quickly as that. So it gives you some comfort knowing that you always have the guilt. You'll never lose the guilt of being not able to protect your kids, because that's the one thing that you should be able to do as a parent. But at the same time, there is a little bit of comfort now that we've done the therapy, knowing that we were helped. There's nothing we could have done. There's literally nothing we could have done. So you just have to kind of make the best of it. And all we've done since that day, we went back to the villa. We spoke to our Joey and Ellis, who were our two older kids at the time, who were 3 and 4, and addressed it with them as open and honestly as we can, that the sister had died and she wasn't coming back. Because
she was honestly walking around the pool as we arrived. We all look around the villa like you do, because there was that many kids. It worked out cheaper to go in a villa than it did to go in a hotel. Sounds posh, doesn't it? It really isn't. We just had that many children between me and our brother and sister, who, by the way, we're amazing. Our Dean's brother is married to my sister, just to make it really weird, like we do in Salford. And so we've got this gaggle of kids between us. That was cost effective, the best way of going on holiday. So we're all like toddling. She's toddling around the pool the night before. She was a bit tired, a bit sleepy, a little bit whiny, a bit unwell. She'd just been on a plane, and she was 1.5 years old. Do you know what I mean?
My picture on my Twitter account's a picture of her stood on one of the suitcases, because the house was a mess because we were packing 6 suitcases the day before, and that's the picture from the very day before. So there's nothing we could have done. You're then presented with how on earth are you going to get through the next day, forgetting the rest of your life at that point. So
yeah,
we've done it for 10 years now, and I'm proud to say
you just take each day, don't you? Because we know that your story, and by the way, thank you for having us on your podcast. We're honoured. And we know that your story in mental health, and thank God we're all banging the drum. Unfortunately, child death is still a real taboo subject, because I don't think it's like the most miserable of miserable can be miserable. And I don't think anybody can, in fairness, wants to talk about it. Now, the problem that happens is when that's your story, you physically feel like an alien. I felt like I'd grown a second head. If I got one more look of complete dismay and pity, I wanted to shove my hand in the face, because it's the most miserable, crappiest, it is the worst death that you can experience, is the death of a child. Second, or like the only thing that's second to that is losing your parent. So the death of a child is worse, losing your parent. Like we're talking about with miscarriages, I've had 5 miscarriages, and they were late miscarriages. So I had to give birth to all 5 of my children who died in the womb. And actually to be able to have a chance of having more children, I had to physically give birth to them so that I didn't damage my womb, because it was too big for me not to give birth. And we don't talk about this side of it, and it's very difficult, because is it morbid? God, yeah. Is it somebody's real story? Yes. Why aren't we talking about it? Why can't a woman say to a mate that she's miscarried, or that she's struggling to conceive, or that she's lost a child?
You know, for us, I always hear someone say, "Oh, if I can help one person," and it sometimes sounds a bit shallow, but nearly 10 years on now, Danielle says the reason we're now able to sort of try and talk is because one of the things we've done, which has kept our minds sane, kept our marriage, because the stats are against you, your marriage is going to end within 2 years. One or both will become addicted to something. And I didn't want to lose Danielle because I've been in love with her since we were kids. We went to school together. We've got a wonderful family, and everything was on the line. Everything was against us, and it was almost a challenge that we're going to overcome this. And we're only going to overcome today, and then we'll deal with tomorrow. But one of the things we did in all of it is support groups and speak to other people who've lost children. And we know many people from, bless them, Hillsborough victims, and the guys from Viola Beach, the
Don't know if you know that story.
And all kinds of horrendous stories in our family at the time. Why do you keep going back there every month? Because it brings back. We're so matter of fact about the way that we talk about it, because we normalised it from the very first day that she died. Because again, a lot of parents that we've spoken to, and each to their own, you've got to do what you think's right. Is our other children, they watch cartoons where somebody gets shot by a character and then next minute they reappear, and we didn't. And she's not in heaven. She's in heaven, of course. She's with all of us all the time, but we needed to make them understand that was what happened, and that we're going to move forward and deal with it and talk about it. And talking about it, you can see already Danielle's quite good at that. That's why she's made a career out of TV. And it's difficult for me as a bloke and a bloke in football, because it is a subject which, people will say, "Oh, how many kids have you got?" Because they see us with our 4 kids that we've got now, and I'm not addressing it. So we've had 5, and all of a sudden you can imagine now it just kills the conversation. But at the same time, let's just, as Danielle just said, let's just make it up. That's why that summer when she died, I was out of contract. I'd had a career which were 3 broken legs, which wasn't the career that I was hoping for at 19 when I was at Bolton and made me debut under Big Sam, and everything was. Danielle fell in love with me, and then all of a sudden broke my leg and ended up in League 1, League 2, and she was in too deep.
I don't think you want for doing it,
and I was out of contract, and I was earning a wage at that point at 30 odd years old, which we were earning to live. It's not, people will see the footballer and the TV star, and we were, and I could not bring any money. I couldn't go through not bringing money, and luckily, the one guy that saved us was Dean Smith, who took me to Walsall as a player coach, and I think it was probably only Dean at that particular time who would have done that, because I remember him saying most managers just didn't return my call. I didn't have an agent. I didn't bother with Premier League. I thought it was a bit done by then. So I got the numbers for 72 Championship, League 1, League 2 managers, and literally rang every single one. And most of them was a voicemail, and hardly any of them ever rang back. And
thanks, but no thanks.
Dean didn't duck it. He said, I'm worried about, he didn't say you're too old, or, you're too slow, you've had injuries. I said, have you made your decision? He said, no. And I said, right then. And I stood on the grass at the front of the house. I'll never forget it. And it was late one summer's evening. And I said to him, right.
Talked him into it.
Here's what I'm going to do to it. I said, I'm meditating twice a day. And even now, meditation and things like that, I taught you, it's a bit weird.
It's not weird.
Mindfulness meditation. I've just seen one of the old neighbours walk into the paper shop for his paper. That for him is his meditation every day. He's in the moment. He's doing his routine. He's going golfing, whatever. So it's got this term, but we would like to try and normalise it to
and normalise.
That was the way it went.
Struggles and normalise feeling.
The key thing in all this is, when I was manager at Bristol, I always tried to be really close with the players and talk about my vulnerabilities and what I'd been through and what we'd been through as a family, because everybody's got their own silent movie going on, and it might be that one of the players' kitchen's flooded by a washing machine that morning, but that's the worst possible thing to ever happen to them at that moment. And you've got to try to talk and help and things like that. And that for us is the only way. And when they see you sometimes getting upset, you might judge and go, oh, he's crumbled, or she's crumbled. That's a good sign. Yeah. It's the ones that are doing it together, and I'm doing great. I mean, we know 4 lads that I grew up with, unfortunately, have committed suicide. We know, as everybody does, mental health, and I hate the word mental health because it stigmas it.
It should be called health.
It's not mental health.
It's just health. Like you're going to, I've just got back from the gym, as you can probably tell. And then shove my earrings in. It's your health, isn't it? It's not, you don't say my physical health. I went to the gym for my physical health.
That's true. It's true.
You know what I mean?
But there is a stigma attached to it. There is, because I remember when I went through my grief with my dad, I didn't even grieve properly for like 10 years. I just made terrible decisions in my personal life, and it manifested in all those kinds of ways. Yeah. And then after 10 years, all of a sudden, it all came kind of rushing out.
Like it won't let you ignore it any longer, isn't it?
Exactly. And, You can tell as soon as you start opening up, when people say, oh, how are you? They don't really want to know. They just want you to say, yeah, I'm good, not bad, thanks. If you sort of said to them, well, actually, I'm feeling really low today and I'm having some sort of, dark thoughts, and you can tell. Or if you say, I'm thinking about my dad who died, or they just kind of want to close down. And it's so healthy to just get it out there, because so many people have suffered lost children, have suicidal thoughts, more than you would ever believe. And that really sort of hit home with me when I finally told everyone what I'd been through in 2014, 15, when I'd been sort of like to the edge of, darkness and back. It was unbelievable to me how many people came to me and said, my God, thank you for saying this. This has really helped. Now, like, I feel kind of normal, what I'm going through. So meditation 100% helped for me, just having that moment of stillness, of quietness, or it could be walking the dog. It could be just sitting, like even reading a self-help book or something like that. It's just however you manage to cope with it. That's what's important.
Do you know what, Bianca? I think it's really interesting that I feel very, very strongly about. There's one thing that we can guarantee in our life. We will die. Yeah. That's the guarantee. So we will be affected by death. We can guarantee it from the second that we are born. Death at some point will be something that will either happen to us or the people around us. We never talk about it.
No,
we never talk. It's not a topic of conversation. It's considered morbid. It's never addressed. The Mexicans have the Day of the Dead, and so as a homage to that, because I love that message. If you ever watched the kids movie Coco or anything like that, it's brilliant for putting that message out there that they're still, if you still think of them, they still live on and they're still in your heart and they're still a part of you. And that's so important. It's saying there is a darker side to life, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean?
No,
it's
absolutely.
We're all too busy being shiny, happy, perfect people.
So with the darker side to life, Dean, especially with you in football, you mentioned how helpful Dean Smith was. What other sort of coping mechanisms did you use in those sort of very early years?
That's what was difficult about COVID. We had our coping mechanisms taken away from us, and that's why Danielle in particular went to a really dark place. Thankfully, she's kind of slowly recovering and relaunching a TV career and hoping to tell a good story. For me, it was we were literally faced with like 4 scenarios when I worked it out. It was like you can do nothing about it and just hope that everything's okay. Well, that's a nervous breakdown waiting to happen at some point. I remember people saying you've got to be the man of the family now and man up, and it's great advice because it's very Manchester, Salford, never have a day off in your life. But I mean, I needed to address it. The other thing, you can do something we just talked about, something completely stupid, but you are faced with them thoughts in the early days, particularly of suicide, unfortunately. But the other one is antidepressants, which is all that we were offered by the GP, short-term fix, which for some people works. And we were lucky.
Grief is not depression either. That needs to be addressed because it's not.
We were lucky that we both chose, for the sake of our marriage, we randomly both chose the same path, which was one of all the therapists. So I needed to understand how I'd gone on holidays as a 32-year-old bloke, married to me soulmate with 3 young children. My brother's wife is her sister. We've all got kids. We've got amazing family all around us. And then one day, and this is where mental health was terming it, is everybody's that close from, because the very next day I completely changed as a person. So how do you get through that at 30 odd years old? I don't understand the person I've become. I was never the angry, and it's grief, of course it is. Now, only by going to see, and we saw Gordon Taylor at an awards do a couple of weeks ago from the PFA. Gordon's had a really, really terrible media, and maybe rightly so in some scenarios. Obviously, I've been close to the PFA over the years as a PFA member, but he rang us in the first couple of weeks after she died and offered us everything possible from the PFA in terms of finance to get help. And we seen him at this awards do a couple of weeks ago, and as I was telling him the story, he had a tear in his eye, because it's nice when someone says thank you face to face like that. So that allowed me to go to see the best psychotherapist in the country in Manchester on King Street, lady
We
called
couldn't have
Sue,
afforded that.
who basically explained to me how your brain works post-trauma. So I'm not a brain specialist, although I try to think I am sometimes. I now understand, and it's Wim Hof. Are you doing the Wim Hof, Bianca?
I'm not doing it. I don't like the cold.
Oh, no, you don't have to do the cold. Just do the breathing stuff. Just do the breathing stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm not going to plunge myself into an ice bath just yet. But yeah, maybe the breathing exercise would help me, definitely, especially when I get anxiety. But it's
brilliant for anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the PFA and you having that sort of financial help with the psychotherapist. I've got a friend of mine at the moment. Obviously, I won't say who it is, but she needs therapy, but she can't afford it. And you're offered 6 counselling sessions, and that's it. And then you're sort of like, take antidepressants and that's it. It's really something that we need to address in this country.
We were lucky our kids got through Meningitis Now, got
art therapy,
because they can't talk to a counsellor, a 4-year-old kid, but they can do ways. It's very, very clever.
It's very clever.
Danielle failed the exam at the GP because they asked you to do a scoring system.
I failed. I didn't qualify for counselling.
Because she was getting out of bed in the morning to take
Oh, really?
We were functioning. I was going playing for balls,
They said, sorry, you just don't qualify. You're grieving, but you're depressed, but that's because you've lost a kid, so that's understandable. Really sorry, but you don't qualify. That's where Meningitis Now comes in and where the PFA comes in and stuff like that. But you're right, we're not, they asked me if I had suicidal thoughts. I answered yes, right? They said, what kind? I explained. She said, oh, that's wanting to be with your child. That's a natural suicidal thought. It's natural to feel suicidal.
I could just say on that, Bianca, because again, we've got a lot of information, we've done a lot of research, and we've been lucky to meet some brilliant people who've helped us, and that's how we kind of would try and help now, is to talk about your friend, because people haven't got the money to do that. You're right. It's
90 quid an hour. She's a single parent. She can't afford it.
And when you've had a panic attack and you're in the middle of a panic attack, and how scared you feel and how terrifying it is, we learn, and it's on YouTube, I can't remember what it's called, you Google it, but you can physically override the panic attack, because your physiological system, there's areas of your body, it's called tapping procedure, and you can make yourself feel back to calmness again. Everything's okay. I get it when I'm late for something. I'm late for something and I go into panic, and almost to the point where I'm shaking, and I'm like, right, no one's dying, you're just a little bit late. It comes back to me I was late once in my whole 22-year career because I got a blowout on the motorway. And even then I felt bad for why did I not leave earlier? So it's something that's ingrained in me from...
It's from being dragged up through northern roots and council house backgrounds and just wanting to, you know what I mean? You just want to be the best. Like being said, the free stuff, all the YouTube stuff, the Wim Hof YouTube breathing is free. It's got an advert at the beginning of it, of course it has. And you do this breathing technique. I do it twice a day and it stops my panic attacks, because it's like a panic breathing, so that when you're then in panic, because the breathing then, it's all to do with how the breathing then makes you panic, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So she can do breathing techniques. If she needs to speak to people, which she does, do you know that there's we went to it because everyone thinks we're dead rich. We'd spent money on counselling and been offered free counselling, and there was never enough. And we went to a church hall and had, what was it called? Like marriage couples counselling, wasn't it? In like a church hall. The woman worked in the prison. She was there for free. We didn't pay anything. We put our tenner in the donation box like you do on the way out, because we wanted it to keep going. But the great thing about support groups and about charities is, unfortunately, that's where your friend needs to go. And it's sad that it's like that. It's sad and it's wrong. But let's try and, so that's the situation. What can we do about it?
That's really good to know.
Take her to where you live down there. I know it's warmer down south, but there'll be a cold freezing reservoir. Take her in there this weekend.
Shut up.
I couldn't go into cold water for 30 seconds maximum, down to my shoulders. We've got one at the training ground, a cold plunge.
It's like a reset.
And I go in every day after training, and I'm up to 12 minutes underwater down to there. And the lads come in after training with the towels on, and they get in the hot jacuzzi with the music and that. And I went up 12 minutes because I put my music on, because it takes my mind away from it. And I'm 3 Cortina songs in. I'm getting out of there. But it shows you how you can just practice and learn, and it's really, really beneficial. I would genuinely say that.
I'm not sure I'll get her in the reservoir, but I will try.
Yeah, breathe.
Just finally, we'll talk about the present and the future. Obviously, Dean, you're in football and you're a manager for some time. Now, you'd think the most stressful job I think there is. Like, why on earth you would want to put yourself through that, I don't know. But maybe that's such a focus that there is nothing else to worry about when you're a manager. Now, I know you're assistant at Stoke at the minute, and I know you're enjoying it, but is management something that you would like to get back into eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love being a manager because it just gave me the opportunity to do it my way, which is totally different to most managers I'd ever played for, apart from Dean Smith. I love the idea of putting a group of players together and staff that you could, as everything we just spoke about, you could come into work because you wanted to come into work, not because you were told to and you were shouted at and you were made to feel this small. It does a disservice to some of my career, that, but it was very old school back then, and there is a new way of tapping into these young players, and I find the psychological side fascinating. When I got sacked, Michael was brilliant. Michael O'Neill rang me within a few days and offered me the chance to come, because I nearly went the year before, to come back into Stoke. And I made a decision, if I was going to go back in as an assistant, having been a manager, I needed to go in with somebody that I had huge respect for, but also I could learn from. And again, really cliche thing to say, but he's been an international, experienced, successful manager. And I am learning so much by working with him. So he knows as well as I do, at some point in the future, I'm ambitious. I want to get to the Premier League with Stoke as an assistant manager. But before we always say we'll be sat on a bench as an 85-year-old couple, sort of overlooking, talking about our life. And I'd like to think when we sat there, and there's been a few challenges in the last 10 years.
Oh my God.
We might not have been there together.
We might have two different benches.
That's just the reality of it. But yeah, I'd like to say that I'd have another crack at it at some point in the future.
Yeah, I definitely hope to see that. And what about you, Danielle? I know you want to get back into your presenting. What kind of presenting can we hope to see you in?
Oh, do you know, it's my passion. I love live television because I was kind of through in the deep end at CITV. So like a lot of presenters are like, oh God, not live television. That is where I thrive. I love live television. I'm speaking at the moment to some local radio stations. It's unfortunately, I don't know how you know this, Bianca. It's kind of not what you know, who you know. So it's a little bit like, oh yeah, can I have a job? Can I have a job? So it's difficult because I was quite happy to be a stay-at-home mom. I never pushed my career. I went to push my career. I was going back to BBC Bite Size when she died. And I just had to grieve my daughter and pull away. So what was supposed to be a 7-year break became a 14, 15-year break. And I'm frightened because it's been a long time, but it's my passion and I know I can do it and I know I do it well. So it's just a case now of meeting with people and just annoying them to a point where they say, oh, for God's sake, give us something just to shut her up.
Magazine show.
I want to do loose swimming, or this morning I'd love, that's my dream.
I'm surprised I haven't asked you to be on that yet. I'm pretty sure you'd be perfect for that, even if it's just a guest spot to start with.
We're pushing it.
Thank you. Really kind to say.
Thank you.
But we'll put this out everywhere, so hopefully they'll see it and they'll realise that you'll be perfect on it. Now, obviously, we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary, aren't we? Losing Cici. How are you going to commemorate that as a family?
I think we've started that already.
It's a good question. We've never done it. The day that she died, we acknowledge it, but we never really do anything particularly special. It's everybody, like family will come around like candles, and it's amazing because they're remembering it, but it's just another day.
No, what we do is we celebrate her birthday. We celebrate all of her birthdays in a big, over the top way, to the point where the other children say, I want my birthday like Cece's birthday. Because we make that much of a fuss, because if we make a fuss about the day she was born, the day she died, no, we don't. However, I'm going to cry saying this, I think. For her, on the 10th anniversary of her dying, I want to find myself and find himself and find some joy, and it not just all be about coping strategies and sadness. Find some joy in being me and him being him, and not a mummy or a wife, or do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's what I want to give her on the 10th anniversary of her death.
You're well on the way to doing that. Maybe you need a little weekend away somewhere. The pair of you.
Boom! Let's do it. Yeah. I don't need to be talked into that.
I also think you both need to write a book. I think you've got a fantastic story. If nothing else, you know, to help other people, as you have been doing, to raise awareness for Meningitis Now, which is also so important. Tell me just quickly about the work that you're doing for Meningitis Now.
We've only just become ambassadors about 4 weeks ago.
So it started with telling our story, really.
So using our social media, tiny following we've got. To tell
3 people who follow us on Instagram.
To get the message out. We met a guy called Steve, who's married to Gloria Damon, who founded Meningitis Now 40 odd years ago. Their son Spencer died 40 years ago, and they had nothing, and they set up this charity. And Steve was a successful businessman, and he took it on his life to make his son proud. And they've raised millions and millions of pounds.
You've done amazing things.
He's become an MBE, and
he got the vaccine.
All laboratories all around down Gloucestershire, down Stroud, funnily enough, down there. I wish I would have met him when I was in Bristol for 5 years, never got the opportunity, but they're like a beacon of hope. And we met another couple who do called the Compassionate Friends, which is one of the support groups we go to. 37 years ago, I think it was, their son randomly died at 13 playing snowball fights because he had a brain aneurysm and died like that. And they had nothing, and they set that up. And in the early days, particularly when you see a couple like that, 37 years, gives you this hope that everything's going to be okay. So purely and simply, that's what we're open to do, because we get people contacting us who just lost a daughter or a son.
I've had a lot of people reach out from the articles over the Sunday, and I tried to message everyone back when they tell their story about losing their child, and I'm honoured that they share those stories with me. It honours me. And
there's literally no hope in the beginning. There's literally no hope.
It's sad, isn't it?
You cannot overcome this physical and mental pain.
So you just survive.
Something like that, you just kind of hang on to it, and then you do the work, and the work is daily.
You do the work, that's it.
You don't. The hardest thing about doing all the work, the psychotherapy, the meditation, the Wim Hof, 12 minutes in the cold water, you don't get any. There's no high. You don't get a buzz from it. It just stops you going to a slightly darker.
Exercise. Can I say that as well?
It's like going to the gym twice a week.
Exercise started as a way of losing weight because I'm a woman, and then became about my mental health. And now I'm dead proud that I do go to the gym, and believe me, I hate it. I am such a reluctant exerciser. I hate going to the gym, just for the record. But it sorts this out.
Exactly.
It's a good way. It has, I don't know the stats, but we've looked into it. Like, exercise has a better rate of making you better than antidepressants. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. It has a better effect on you. I don't know the numbers, but it does have a better effect on you than taking antidepressants. So prescribe yourself a run round the block once a day when you keep your heads up your ass.
It's just it's a bit like the social media thing where you put a picture on and it's a snapshot of your life, and like, this looks really nice.
It's a mess behind this camera. It's a mess.
There's a load of washing on the floor. There's pots all around, like, because that's real life. And you know, it's not all been smooth sailing for us. We've had, you know, difficult times through our marriage. We've had, you know, but in the early days, for me particularly, I might go and drink a little bit more than I did previously on a Saturday night, and then, you know, so
we've had financial problems as well, because my work was very sporadic, and so
I don't want people to look at us and you're always put in a box of footballer or football coach and TV presenter. I'm a bloke who's got brothers and sisters, who's a son, who's a father, who's just happened to play football, and the same with Danielle, you know. And the strongest message I wanted to get across was, you're classed as being not very mentally strong. Whatever mentally strong is when you have mental health problems. We grew up in Salford. We had both totally different but incredible childhoods, really loving, amazing parents and siblings. And she got through in front of thousands of people with no financial help to become a TV star. And I was never the best footballer, but there's something ingrained into us through our upbringing, from our parents, of never giving in and keep trying and all that type of stuff. And it's difficult some days, but that's the thing. Overnight, everything was on the line for us, and we've managed nearly 10 years in now to
essentially, Bianca, survive. We managed to survive. I call myself a survivor. I survived the death of my child, and I'm trying to survive the death of my child. And that's what I think I think we just, as a general sweeping statement, need to talk more about death and normalise it and have more support groups and more help.
Get it into schools, get it into
Yeah.
schools instead of sitting there and doing an hour's whatever the rubbish that they might do, and get it into a part of the schools and make it normal. Normalise it.
Normalise it, because it's there and it's not going anywhere, and it's the one thing we're guaranteed. One thing.
That's brilliant. That's
I'll drive 4 hours to Sheffield now.
No, I mean, it's brilliant that we've been able to laugh about it. And I think when you've been to the depths of despair, the only way is up. And I'm so glad that you've been able to do that. You've been able to do it together. And now we can talk about it. And, you know, it's not over yet. We're still going to have our dark days, the three of us and the people who are watching this. But we've learned how to survive them, as you said. Yeah. So it's so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the interview.
Thank you. Thanks, Bianca.